Hello and welcome to ThePrint. On Thursday, we saw that the government tabled a bill in Rajya Sabha that seeks to replace the Chief Justice of India with a cabinet minister nominated by the Prime Minister of India for the selection of the Chief Election Commissioner as well as election commissioners. Well, does this compromise the poll body's independence? That is the question we have taken up for discussion in this episode of Political Adda. Please welcome SY Quraishi, who is our expert today, who is the former Chief Election Commissioner of India. Please also welcome our political editor DK Singh. In the course of this episode, we will be taking questions from our viewers that have been sent to us. So without much ado, let's begin today's episode with the first question itself, sir. Does it at all compromise the independence of the poll body?
Well, not really, because actually the introduction of collegium, which is what Supreme Court had ordered, is a positive step because for the last 70 years, the election commissioners were appointed by the government of the day unilaterally, and questions were raised. But of course, it's a miracle that almost all of the CECs and ECs conducted themselves with great neutrality and fairness. Only lately, there were 2-3 of them on whom questions were raised, which was unfortunate because the prestige of the institution, its image as a neutral and fair institution, is absolutely essential and as a mandate of the Constitution. So there has been a demand for a long time, including coming from Election Commission itself, that there be a collegium system so that the decision may collect. And the most important component of the collegium is the LOP, the leader of opposition. Because if the leader of opposition has signed the appointment letter, then the opposition parties will have no moral authority to question the neutrality of the incumbent and question his decisions. So that way, collegium is being set up. The variation from the Supreme Court judgment is that they had constituted a collegium with Chief Justice in it. And he has been replaced in this bill with another union minister appointed by the Prime Minister. Now, two from the government and the third one, the LOP, actually neutralizes the importance of the LOP. The conclusion is foregone. Whosoever government appoints, the two will vote for him. The third may keep protesting. It will mean nothing, and you can go home. So this controversy will still continue for some time, and I have a feeling that it might go back to the court on this issue, and let us see what comes out of it. Although, I have a solution to this. I wrote an article in which I have mentioned that the one solution is, and which is very easy, very doable, if there is political will. Okay, these 3 members, the 2 are majority, the other is minority. Let the decision be unanimous. Now, if that is the case, the problem is taken care of. It's a very simple solution. And now, why it is a feasible and doable thing, that the government will not be throwing surprises at the LOP. Another good thing which has happened in this bill is they have proposed a search committee headed by the cabinet secretary with 2 senior secretaries who will select 5 members from the eligible list. Now, that's a very good thing. Another good thing, for the first time, for the last 70 years, there was no criteria of who is eligible to be CEC or EC, which is strange, but it's a miracle. And it's a good thing that the government has been appointing only the civil servants for a very good reason, because the civil servants, particularly the IAS officers, have conducted elections all through their career, from the beginning, from SDM, as a collector, returning officer. I was even a presiding officer of a single booth, then returning officer in many elections, observer in many elections under Mr. Session. So with a lifelong experience, such a person cannot go wrong. The election is in our blood. So now the fact that the catchment area is only the secretaries to Government of India and equivalent, and they will be shortlisted people with integrity and good record, which goes without saying, because to reach the level of secretary, it is presumed that you are a good officer and a meritorious officer and you are an honest officer. Because out of 100 selected initially, only 5, 7 make it to the top at secretary. So from the top, if 5 are selected, they will all be equally good. And if one of them is selected, surely leader of opposition and prime minister can find one person out of the list by his own cabinet secretary on which both can agree, and then that will carry credibility. It is a different matter that the person so selected may behave differently once he sits on the chair, but that can happen with anybody.
So I have a couple of questions here, sir. So fine, the Supreme Court said that until the Parliament makes law, this will be the panel, and going by what the Parliament has done by bringing the government by bringing this bill, it's not actually going against the Supreme Court. But the point was, the spirit of the judgment was, even the petitions on which this judgment was delivered were all about executive interference, what independence of the Election Commission. Does this proposed bill ensure that there is no executive interference? That is question number one. Second question, when we talk about the search panel headed by the Cabinet Secretary and comprising 2 secretaries, now what's the guarantee that the Cabinet Secretary will not be doing the government's bidding? Say for instance, here is a Cabinet Secretary who the Prime Minister loves, he has already got 3 extensions. Now what is the guarantee that he will not be doing what he is asked to do? And then the 2 other officers. So that's about the search panel. And then, as you yourself have pointed out in your article, I did that in the morning, that the bill also provides for the option of picking somebody outside the list given by the search panel. So if the government is not happy, it will go outside the list. And then in the 3-member selection panel, you have the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Minister. LOP's voice will just go unheard, just what we are seeing in the selection of CBI directors. So my question is, the bill as it is, does it...
Mr. Singh, you brought in too many questions, and I'm an old man, I forget. But let me see, I go backward. One is that the bill says that although the shortlisting committee will put up 5 names, but the committee can decide to go outside that. That is absurd. To my mind, that is totally absurd, because that makes a mockery of the selection committee. And secondly, whether the Cabinet Secretary will put up a favorable name, I entirely agree. Now, and you rightly said that the Cabinet Secretary who got 4 extensions surely is the government's blue-eyed boy. And that blue-eyed boy, and even if he was not a blue-eyed boy, to be the Cabinet Secretary is a blue-eyed boy of the government. Now, he would not put up 5 names or any name in those 5 which will be offensive and objectionable. And thirdly, in any case, the catchment area, all the secretaries, as I said, all of them will have brilliant record, similar record, because without that, you cannot become secretary. It's a different matter that you pick up a brilliant man with a brilliant record, integrity certificate, hard work certified, everything, and once he becomes the incumbent, his actions are questionable, as has happened unfortunately in the last few years in 1 or 2 cases, which is very sad because that affects the reputation. It takes years to build up a reputation and seconds to demolish it. So therefore, these 2 things, one collegium shortlisting committee is a good idea, even if all these 5 members are already pre-cleared by the government, that is all right, because they are all officers of experience. And but getting somebody from outside is a certain no.
My question was, does the bill as it is provide for the independence of the Election Commission? The bill as it is.
Yeah, it basically does, with some aberrations. Basically, it does. Now, Supreme Court had said that till the Parliament passes a law, this will be the collegium. Now, if Parliament may pass a law without a collegium, they could pass anything because the collegium was only till the passing of the law. The fact that the government has gone by the system of collegium, and it is not a new concept. There are collegium for many posts, CVC, CIC, even Director CBI, who is not even a constitutional post. He is not even a statutory post. He is a head of a department like Director of Agriculture. Nothing more, nothing less. Just because he performs an important function, Supreme Court had ordered that there should be collegium and they will be party. And as you rightly pointed out, that now how has been the performance of collegium? Has everybody appointed through this collegium system performed to the satisfaction of the country? Have the questions not been raised again? Particularly one case which is mentioned again and again and mentioned to me, one director of CBI against whom there were serious cases, allegations from the Intelligence Bureau, that one criminal went 183 times in 1 year to his house. So yes, but he was appointed by a collegium with the Chief Justice present in it, and nothing was done. He continued. He finished his term. The inquiry continues, and it still is continuing. So what exactly is happening? So therefore, concept of collegium is good because for public perception it's very good, but how with the intention, with what sincerity it functions, that is important. And if you make it unanimous decision, surely out of 5, and those 5 have been selected out of 140 crore people, surely there will be 3 persons in the country on which both the Prime Minister and leader of opposition will agree that he is a good person, she is a good person. So therefore, I think the spirit demand that the LOP should happily sign that. In fact, I was the CEC, incumbent CEC. Karan Thapar interviewed me and he asked me this question. I said, although I've been appointed by the government of the day, which I'm questioning and saying that I would have been happier if leader of opposition was signatory. So he repeated that question. He said, you would have been happier if Sushma Swaraj had also signed your appointment order. I said, definitely, because that creates public perception that the guy is acceptable across all political parties. And the perceptions of neutrality is extremely important on a job like this.
So you have brilliantly pointed out, sir, it's a brilliant solution, but unfortunately that's not part of the bill, and I'm sure it is not going to be part of the law when it becomes a law. That consensus you are talking about. We have seen what happens in the collegium system for the CBI director, even when CJI is there. You end up having the LOPs, usually the LOPs, in many cases they get out giving a dissenting note, give a statement outside that this is not what we wanted, and still government goes ahead with that. So that's another point. But one thing you have pointed out in your column today in the Indian Express, where you said that having the CJI in the collegium is a bit difficult, would not be very prudent, because if somebody challenges it in the court, and if CJI has been part of the process, how will you challenge it in the court? So that's a very valid point. But the point is, if not CJI, who do you think would have replaced him? Not a minister for sure, because his Prime Minister will be nominating him, but who could that be, that independent entity who could be in place of the CJI?
Well, people say that maybe the speaker, but again, a speaker is a political entity, or notionally he is above party politics, but he is a party man, and therefore there is I don't know, maybe not Chief Justice himself, but a judge appointed by, or a former judge appointed by the Chief Justice, so that the conflict of interest when the case comes challenging the appointment, the same judge, CJI, who was party to the selection, then sits in judgment whether the selection was fine or not. So, yeah, maybe a former judge nominated by the Chief Justice.
Yes.
Sir, Ritik Chaudhary has a question for you. He wants to know, it's a generalized question. He says, what should be focused upon to ensure independence of public offices, its appointment process or post-retirement appointments? And he gives an example that judges' appointment are independent, but post-retirement opportunities compromise their independence?
Yes, I think, yes, I should have mentioned this. This is also additional provision in this act, which is good. That post retirement appointment are not allowed for CAG, for members of the UPSC, but there is no such restriction on election commissioner. With the result that two of our predecessors, one became a governor, another became a Rajya Sabha MP, and then a minister. And I have been questioned about that across the world. So that does raise a question mark about the neutrality, and putting a bar on their appointment after the retirement, I think is a good idea. And at the same time, so that their standard of living doesn't go down, and on the meager pay, which is half of your last pay, minus all the allowances and perks and everything, suddenly your standard, you should not be seen selling pakoras on the street. One solution which has been voiced again and again, that let the, after all, the one or two, one commissioner CEC retires every year, or maybe once in 2 years. They are living for former C 6 or 7. Now, if you give them the last pay for a lifetime and debar them from anything, that will be a very fair provision, very fair decision. But even if not giving them last pay, barring them from taking any other job under the government is a good idea. But also, remember, having worked under Rashtrapati all our life, to work post-retirement under a businessman is a worse idea. It goes against the dignity, because there are very rich people, businessmen, industrialists, and they say, all right, just to enhance the image of their board, they appoint you. So it is better that the government itself takes care of their dignified existence post-retirement.
So some people may also argue that at the end of the day, it's all about the individual, who is the CEC. You were also government appointed. There was no collegium system. There were no allegations against you as such. TN Session was the part of the same system. The government appointed him. He changed the entire thing. So at the end of it, it's all about the individuals. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree, because if you take the last 10 years, Ashok Lavasa was appointed by the same government, and I'm not naming the ones who did not do a good job. I'm not, that will be negative. But there were others who brought bad name to the institution. But same Ashok Lavasa, appointed by the same government, stood up. He was principal. So it's a question of individual morality, individual conscience, and backbone.
But why
O.P. Rawat was another CC appointed by the same government, and he was a brilliant CC. He was even mentioned editorially for his very good decision. So it is a question of individual performance. And I said it also, that record of all the people before the selection committee are equally good. And on paper, a good man is selected, but how he behaves, it's a matter of individual choice or individual conscience and moral standards.
Because people start having apprehensions, because sometimes when you have a candidate who has been a CBGT chairperson, under whose supervision raids were allegedly conducted against opposition leaders all through his tenure, and then he comes as the CEC, obviously at least the opposition parties will have apprehensions about his conduct.
Yeah, of course. That was one very questionable thing, and which will continue to be debated and which will continue to haunt us. Yes, that's a good point you have raised.
So Aditya also wants to know, do you think this move of the Modi government can be seen as a counter-attack on the judiciary in respect of the Supreme Court ruling out the change in the collegium system?
Well, yes and no. No, in the sense that the Supreme Court wanted for transparency a collegium system, so they introduced a collegium. Yes, in the sense that CJI has been removed from this collegium, although CJI is there in many other collegium. Collegium is functioning with the Prime Minister for the last many years and for different posts. So it may look like a snub to the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice. So let us see how what follows.
And Ashish Maharana wants to know, does this bill, does it not break the basic structure doctrine?
Not really, because after all, appointment of election commissioners has been done by the government, and the letter of the constitution is that the president can appoint anybody. Earlier, even the qualification like secretary level, even that was not prescribed. And executive has been appointing the CECs for the last 7 years, and they've all brought glory to the institution, except one or two whose actions have put a question mark. Okay, there are exceptions, leave them apart. But most of the CECs have brought glory to. We are considered a wish guru. In the election commission, in my time, we set up an institute, India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, on top of the election commission. In 11 years, 110 countries have trained from us, and not just not students at all, but top management of the election commission, including the chief election commissioner and election commissioner. If there is a beeline of democratic countries to learn elections from India, from election commission, surely India Election Commission of India deserves this acknowledgement and appreciation, recognition, and they have done something right to deserve this award.
Well, Sankalp has an interesting point to make. He says, let's say that the CGI is included in the selection process. Would that certify, he says, the election body's independence? Is there a guarantee that out-of-power parties would stop accusing the EC of being partisan?
No, probably it will not. And I'll take you back to the thing which we mentioned earlier, and you pointed out. Now, director of CBI, one director of CBI, who became highly controversial. Well, he was appointed by the collegium in which Chief Justice was present. And the same Chief Justice then received the complaints and did nothing. So, therefore, that is where the other point Mr. Singh had made about this being a question of individual integrity and moral standards. So, that possibility cannot be ruled out. Good collegium, even with CJI, in good faith, with good intentions, they appoint somebody, and that somebody turned out to be a spineless guy. So there is no guarantee.
So let me ask you an innocuous question. If the CEC or election commissioners, if they are pliant, in what many ways can they help the government or the ruling party in elections?
Well, if you just see the kind of questions which have been raised, several questions were raised when the election dates were announced. I'm not going to detail, but there are several, when the dates were announced to accommodate the executive who wanted to make some big announcements in the state going to poll, for which the election was delayed by 20 days. No, that has been, these kind of things which have been questioned. The Ashok Lavasa case happened when model code of conduct violations or complaints came, and election commission did nothing for 25 days till Supreme Court came down heavily on the election commission, and they said these complaints are not your property, you are sitting over, you have to take a decision. Immediately next day they took a decision. What decision did they take? Exonerated, no fault, no offense done. On the Ashok Lavase story followed, I don't want to go into detail. Now, this can happen. So, deletion of names from electoral roll, those kind of complaints keep coming. They may be carelessness or computer error, or there are 12 million people who conduct the election. That may be dishonesty at the bottom. But then the buck is stopped somewhere. The responsibility is at the top. How does it happen that the whole mohalla is deleted and the margin of victory is only 50, 60, 100, 200? You just remove a mohalla of 500 people, result change. Now, these are the questions which have been raised in the past repeatedly. So, when you say what can happen, Well, these are the kind of things which can happen.
If I may ask you, you were the Chief Election Commissioner between 2010 and 2012. There was the Congress government at the center. Did you get calls from the powers that be in those days, say from the political secretary of Sonia Gandhi or from the Prime Minister's office or somebody to fix the date or ask the possible dates?
You know, the politicians are very smart. They try to influence somebody who can be influenced. If they realize that this guy is what they call in Hindi akkad, ये किसी की नहीं सुनता, बड़ा बदतमीज है, नहीं सुनता, so they don't even dare to approach. And that is the kind of reputation which is a very good reputation to have, that this guy will not listen to. In fact, many politicians, just in election, I have seen that politicians are temporarily unhappy with a man like this who is not yielding to their unreasonable request. But deep in the heart, they respect such a man because they realize that he will not even succumb to my opposition pressure also. If this guy doesn't succumb, doesn't listen to me, I'm in power. So there is no question of he listening to a man in opposition. So actually they respect. Actually, this is what happened to me. I was in the very bad books. My chief minister then, I would not name, but now was not even talking to me for 4 months because I had shown the temerity of questioning certain things or rejecting certain demand. Same person, chief 4 months later says, Mr. Quraishi, I want you to be my principal secretary. I said, sir, सोच लिया है आपने? कहने लगे कुरैशी साहब, कोई मिनिस्टर अपना प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी बगैर सोचे रखता है क्या? तो मैंने कहा नहीं सर, it's better to be clear. Now the fact that being in such bad books that he was not even accepting my greeting and he picked me up as principal secretary, that politicians have the sixth sense. They're very smart people. They're grassroots people, they understand. So they actually value people who have high moral standard, even if some of their decisions may be temporarily inconvenient, unpleasant, but actually they respect the people. And they test you. They test the ground. If you are willing to be the doormat, they will make you a doormat and worse. And if you are not the kind, they respect you. So, and in any case, even if a politician gets unhappy and he sidelines you, gives you less important or even transfers you, if you are ready for those things, I'm talking generally in terms of career, doesn't matter. So I was sidelined 2-3 times in my 40 years career. Those were the best years of my life because that is when I did my PhD. That is when I settled my financial matters. That is when I settled my personal matters. Instead of sulking and surrendering and going, sir, sorry, jo aap kahenge, nothing to it. You put me in the doghouse, you put me in cold storage. I'm happy, I'll just relax. So that is something which our junior civil servants need to understand. The anger of the executive is temporary, and in any case, even if it is long term, doesn't matter. Don't do anything when you cannot sleep properly, where your conscience pricks you. You can't. You can fight everybody, but you can't fight your conscience.
A clue who this chief minister was?
Well, Mr. Umparkar Chotala, and I found now to the fact that he chose me. In fact, there was one secretary to Mr. Vajpayee there, a friend of mine. He said, Quraishi, since he has appointed you, he has gone up 100 notches in my esteem. Because now for a chief minister to select a man with a decent reputation, also because the kind of people you select also reflects on you. So, and he was such a nice chief minister, and I've seen him at work. Not once did he ask me to do anything wrong, and not. And there were, on the contrary, there were many occasions when I would give him very blunt advice that somebody, so if he is demanding this thing or that thing, is wrong. You should not do that. I will not allow you to do that, and he appreciated it. And it is sometimes the bureaucrat says that chief minister says, I'm not happy with DK Singh, go and abuse him. They say, no, sir, why abuse? I'll go and slap him. It has to be the other way. It has to be the other way. Okay? If he says, okay, go and slap him, I say, sir, there is no need to slap. I'll go and persuade him. I'll talk to him. So this is how we have to moderate. That is our job. We are professional. We are trained to do that. So, but for short-term gains to become, and I have told my junior colleague that in 35 years career, up good and bad, up and down, average will be the same. So don't try to, in your greed to become a cushy job or a lush job, don't compromise.
So
Be right and you will be respected.
Sir, another of our viewers, P. Dhaiwala, also has a question. He wants to know that he's stating Justice Joseph of the Supreme Court, and he quotes, this law will continue to hold good until a new law is made by Parliament, unquote. So he's saying if Parliament is acting on what Supreme Court said, then what's wrong in that?
Yes, no, I agree with him. What I said, that the interim, the collegium which was suggested by the Supreme Court, there was no collegium for election earlier. The collegium which was suggested was till the Parliament comes with the law, and the Parliament is coming with the law. It's a good thing. If the law could have been without collegium also, that would also have been valid, but they are accepting the principle of collegium. Only the constitution of the collegium, they have made that change, which we debated at length.
Sir, Hemsagar Jakula also has a question for you. He says, does it make sense to have a committee of 3 people where 2 people are from one side and only 1 from the other side in any scenario? So, what's your view on that?
Yeah. No, we have discussed that. Obviously, the result is a foregone conclusion. The 2 members of the executive will decide on a person. The third man will be overruled. And if the majority, the principle is followed in this judgment, surely the minority, the LOP, will be neutralized, will have no meaning at all. He will keep on giving dissenting note, which will be consigned to the dustbin. So, which is where I have a solution, which is doable. Let there be unanimity. Let there be unanimous decision. And surely some people might say, that gives a veto power to LOP. That unless he agrees, nobody will get appointed. But no veto power because you are giving him a list of 5. You have to choose from this list of 5. And those 5 surely are already as Mr. Singh mentioned, they are already pre-read by the government. So for the government, anyone picked up out of those 5 is good enough and all right. So, and LOP is obliged to pick up from those 5. So I think this is the most workable solution if somebody would like to consider it.
I hope our lawmakers listen to you and
Yes.
start debating it at least.
Sir, I'll just ask this one last question.
I hope the print is viewed and read by the government.
So Aditya wants to know, this is one of the last questions. Do you think this is just the beginning and more such bills might be introduced where role of judiciary would be eliminated in crucial appointments of other constitutional posts?
Well, that's an ongoing debate because judicial activism and arguments for and against, they have gone on ever since we have been in service. So that debate is ongoing. It's a tug of war which goes on. The executive would like all power. Judiciary would like to curb that power. So this is an ongoing thing. So let us see how it works out.
So, do you think we need similar reforms or some sort of collegial system in the appointment of state election commissioners also? Because we hear so many complaints against them. State election commissioners.
Yeah, I think so because the logic is the same. That's a good idea. Why not? Same logic because they do this very important panchayat election and municipal election, and there are problems with those elections also. So the principle is the same, and if it is extended to the state, it's a good idea.
Sir, my last question: would it be fair to conclude that in the absence of if the lawmakers don't listen to you, the recommendations you have just made, the bill as it is actually ensures status quoism. Earlier, Prime Minister used to recommend it to the President, appointment should happen. Now, the route has changed, but essentially it's the Prime Minister who will be getting things done. So, it's kind of a status quo, nothing changes.
Yeah, they're quite right, because the wording of the Constitution is that the President will appoint anybody on the recommendation of the Prime Minister and the Union Cabinet. Now, this Union Cabinet is actually superfluous. The cabinet, it doesn't come to the cabinet. Look, we are planning to put up these candidates to the thing. The power of the cabinet is all delegated to the Prime Minister. It gets reduced to one man, the Prime Minister. Prime Minister chooses, sends the name to the panel or a single name to the President, and he appoints. When my name went out, it was a single name. Sometimes the panel is sent, but mostly in the past, a single name was selected by the PM has been going to the President. So now that will change into this system of 5-member shortlist. From that list, somebody selected, the entire case will go to the President. That's a good thing. Now, before you take further question, there are two important things which we have missed out in this interview so far. One very important thing which this bill is proposing, which is not being debated, is that so far the removal of election commissioners was extremely weak. While the chief election commissioner was protected from removal, except through impeachment, like a judge of the Supreme Court. The other two could be removed on the recommendation of the CEC. No, we haven't. Now, the important thing, now it's a 3-member commission, and they have an equal right, equal vote, but one is protected from removal, the other two are not protected, and they feel they are on probation. They're always looking over their shoulder, oh, is the government happy with me? Will they elevate me or not? And now, if they get weakened like this, if they feel like probationers, that is the undoing of the commission. Now, this bill is doing a great thing. We have been demanding it, and they are doing it, that they will be protected. All three will be removed only through impeachment, like a judge of the Supreme Court. That's a very good thing which we should applaud, and which is why I say that this bill actually is a mixed bag. There are problems and there are positives. And one final thing which is negative, that they have sought to downgrade the status of the Election Commission. 1993 Act equated all three commissioners to a Supreme Court judge. This bill says that they will be equated to the Cabinet Secretary. Now, Cabinet Secretary and the Supreme Court judge salary is the same, but their status is different. Their position in warrant of precedence is different. In public perception, to say that the Supreme Court has a Election Commission is of the rank of Supreme Court, that is a very good optic. Now, whether this degradation is deliberate or this has inadvertently crept in, I would appeal to the government to please look into this. Unless you want to do it deliberately to bring them down, so that's different. You want to humiliate them, but please do not downgrade them. That was well considered, 1993 Act. Earlier, there was a time before Mr. Session, the Chief Election Commissioner was in the rank of Secretary to Government of India. And how was he treated? Mr. Session, in his article himself, has mentioned that to buy a book of 30 rupees, they had to write to the Law Ministry. Mr. Session has mentioned how the people have seen Chief Election Commissioner sitting outside the Law Minister's room, waiting to be called in. Now, do you want those days back? Surely not. Not desirable. And again, if they left out the incumbent, in my time, Veerappa Moily was the law minister. He said, Quraishi, you keep talking of electoral reform. Why didn't you come and have a cup of tea with me? Immediately, for 5 seconds, I thought, look, if I go there, immediately, the question is, I'm an independent constitutional authority, not under the government. So I requested Moiliji, very kind of you to invite me. But can I invite you to the Election Commission? I'll introduce you to my colleague. And very gracious of him. that he came to the election commission and he spent what he thought will be a half an hour courtesy call, became a 3.5 hour serious discussion in electoral reform. Then he says, we'll go all around the country, 7 regional conferences. Will you join us? I said, we'll co-host it because it is our agenda. 3 months later, he came a second time. So, Quraishi, now we have done 7. Let us now think of the 8th, and Prime Minister has given time. Let us discuss the arrangement. In 70 years, the law minister comes to election commission twice in 3 months. Then he was transferred. So I went to Mr. Manmohan and I protested, sir, we have prepared the ground for electoral reform with so much of effort and you have transferred him. He said, doesn't matter. The new law minister, that is Salman Khurshid, I'll tell him, he will come and discuss and he will do exactly what you want. 3.5 months. Within 3.5 months, the third time the law minister of the country comes to the election commission. Now, these are optics, but these are very important. If I go and sit outside law minister's room, waiting in the secretary's room, my neutrality goes for a second.
Last question, sir, because you have brought up this topic of electoral reforms. What exactly are the crucial electoral reforms that you think should be pushed now?
Well, the one, of course, was this neutrality, the perception and parliament, which is now being debated. Hopefully, with some correction, it will go through. One thing, the money power in election is an unsolved problem. We have tried to do a book which I wrote in 2014 called An Undocumented Wonder, The Making of the Great Indian Election. I listed 40 modus operandi of abuse of money power, cheating, which we had discovered till then. There would have been many more, right? So money power continues to be a problem. And even the Prime Minister had raised concern that, because of prolonged election and there's so much of money, there is a solution in the hand of the government. Now, law in its wisdom has provided for a ceiling on expenditure by a candidate. It used to be 70 lakhs for Lok Sabha, but I think it is now 80, 82, whatever it is. Now, candidate cannot spend a rupee more than that. If he does, he loses his membership and gets disqualified, right? Now, but his political party can spend 10 crores or 20 crores on him. So that disturbs the level playing field. So what is the logic of a cap? And answer, very simple, very doable. Put a similar cap on the political party expenditure. That is unlimited. And if political party spends 50,000 crores on an election, so surely once they come to power, they want the return on investment. And how does it happen? You know, and I know.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this detailed analysis. And we will be back next week with a new episode. Thank you.